So what do you call a failed coup attempt? A rehearsal. And if America doesn't get its act together, the final performance could be a real showstopper. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Get into the economy as a starting point and its relationship to the rise of neo-fascism on the right and the impact of Reaganism. Some of this stuff is stuff that I've ranted about before, but this is reaching a crisis point right now here in the United States. I mean, if you think things are bad now in America, just wait until people start kicking in people's doors for food. There's already an epidemic of food shoplifting. There's an epidemic of stealing, packages from people's houses. Last week, we had a homeless person going through our garbage looking for cans. It's happening all over the country. And in fact, I mean, the Washington Post just today, the headline, 2020 was the worst year for economic growth since the Second World War. Which was, the Second World War was like on the tail end of the Republican Great Depression. We are now in the second Republican Great Depression. Another Washington Post article points out we are now only out of every six families with children, six renter families with children. One of those six families, quote, lacked sufficient food in the past 7 days, end quote. This is a survey that was done 2 weeks ago. One in between 6 and 7 families, 1 in 6 families, more or less, literally at this moment, as we're speaking, in the United States of America, the so-called richest country in the world, 1 in 6 families don't have enough food for their kids. 1 in 6 families who rent. This is a situation that literally does not exist in any other developed country in the world. You are not seeing food lines in Canada. You are not seeing, bread lines essentially in Germany. All these other countries, pretty much every other OECD country, I don't have a complete list, but I can certainly tell you at least 15 or 20 of them, are making direct payments to all of the people who were employed before this pandemic blew up our economies, combined with 40 years of austerity. All of these countries are making direct payments to people. We've done that twice in the United States, right? With a $600 check and what was it, a $1,200 check way back last year, a $1,000 check, the original check. That's it. In the UK, in France, in Germany, in Norway, in Spain, people are getting $1,000 a month, a week, or $1,500, or whatever it may be. I mean, they are maintaining their working class. We are not. I can't even call it the middle class anymore. Fewer than half of Americans are middle class. So how could you call it middle? We are in an unacknowledged second Republican Great Depression. Yes, that's what they called the one back in the 30s, right up until Republicans started squealing about it in the 1950s, and Joe McCarthy started saying, don't call it the Republican Great Depression anymore, number one. And number two, when you refer to the Democratic Party, call it the Democrat Party with emphasis on the rat. The great forgetting, right? How quickly we forget. This survey that they completed just 2 weeks ago found this, again, from today's Washington Post. Fully 46% of American children who live in renter households their household is either behind on their rent or they lack sufficient food, or both. Roughly half of American families with children who are renting. Now, there was a time in America when we saw something very much like this. I remember growing up in the 1950s. My mom telling me about, who was born in the 1920s. Both my parents were born in the 1920s. I think mom was born in 26 and dad was in 29. And I remember her telling me or showing me how to get the last little bit of toothpaste out of a toothpaste tube by, you roll it all up all the way down to the end, and then you put it in the door, you open a door and you stick it in that crack, where the hinge is, and then you use the leverage of the door to squeeze the last bit of toothpaste out. And she told me stories about how when she was going to Michigan State University, and living in the dormitory, or actually, I think she lived in a sorority house. Actually, I'm not sure now that I think about it, because, I mean, she was broke. Although maybe then it was cheaper. I don't know. She put herself through college working summers as a lifeguard in Charlevoix, Michigan. But in any case, to get the last of the tube, she taught me how to use just 2 little squares of toilet paper to be frugal, right? This was my parents' thing. My dad, once he got a job, when I was around 7 years old, he got a job in a tool and die shop where he worked for almost 50 years after that. And he constantly was impressing on me the importance of getting a good job, and a good union job, and keeping it. I largely ignored that advice and went off to be an entrepreneur, which my dad encouraged, by the way. But still, I've told this story many times on the air, in 1956, and, when I was 5 years old, going to the cheese store with my dad, my mom, and my brothers, the surplus food store from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where we'd get, the bricks of American cheese and a 10-pound box of powdered milk and a 25-pound bag of macaroni. But what was going on back then in the 1950s that I remember, and in the 1930s that my parents told me about, was that nobody was in the media saying government can't help us. There was nobody out there saying, the 9 most dangerous or scary words in the English language are, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Nobody was talking like that. Because Franklin Roosevelt had proven to America that government could work. Well, now we've had 40 years of this sales pitch from the Republican Party and the Reaganistas that government, in fact, can't work. And surprise, surprise, they broke it, right? They've broken our government. And you've got all these people who are saying, well, government doesn't work. Why should I, so let's just overthrow the damn thing. Or let's fill it with crackpots. Or let's put in charge of every government agency some lobbyist for some industry. This was Trump's response. It was also George W. Bush's response. And of course, it's what Ronald Reagan did. And I'm telling you, if we can't prove the government works, and by we, I'm talking about the Democratic Party, because there's not a single Republican on board with this. If Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress can't prove the government can work, can help you and me, can help the people who are unemployed, can help the 1 in 6 renting families who literally cannot feed their children right now as we speak, who can't stop this epidemic of homelessness. If Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress can't do what Franklin Roosevelt did and take us out of a second Republican Great Depression, you think the coup of 2021 was bad? The coup of 2024, it was the old joke. What do you call a failed coup? A rehearsal. And that's where we're at. These guys are viewing, they viewed Michigan as a rehearsal for January 6th. And now they're talking about January 6th as a rehearsal. Well, they got this new conspiracy theory that on March 4th, Donald Trump is going to be sworn in as the real president of the United States. I mean, this is the crackpot stuff. But although it's got millions of followers. But, just setting aside the crazy stuff, if the Republicans succeed, if Mitch McConnell succeeds in preventing government from helping average Americans, like they have been blocking now for literally 40 friggin' years. If he succeeds, if the Republicans succeed in this, if Rand Paul succeeds in this, then the next coup is going to be a hell of a lot worse.